Would like to welcome everyone to the August 10th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. At this time, the prayer will be given by Alderwoman Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody bow your head. God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Aster.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here. Now, at this time, I would like to petition as a citizen, Ms. Sonia Simmons, if you'd like to come forward.
Let's say good afternoon to everyone. I'm here in regards to, I currently have a couple of businesses in New Bern, and in the last 16 years, from child care to beauty salon, I put my signs out for advertisement for small businesses, but now I'm currently opening a private alternative school for kindergarten through 5th grade, and I have ordered 2 sets of signs because every week that I notice that every time I put a sign out, someone goes and remove it. So some of the local businesses have given me permission to put it in there. And so one of the local businesses told me that a city personnel is coming by to take them up. So my concern is, and I called to find out, why is my sign being taken up and not other business signs? So I currently, in the last couple of days, have taken pictures where my sign has been removed, but the signs of the local businesses are still in place. And I just didn't know if there was a new audience since I've opened a business that has changed that I was not aware of. So I want to just see if we can resolve it, and if that is, that everyone need to be treated the same, including when it comes to politics. The sign stays out there until someone gets elected. And so I'm just trying to figure out, why are we different?
Could you tell us a couple of locations where you're having that problem?
The first section would be on South Glen Road, where Liberty Taxes is located.
Do you have an address, Ms. Simmons? What is the address of that location?
That address is the 1200 block of South Glen right there on the corner. And then the next one is the intersection right before you get to Smithfield, right there after you're going to the bypass. And then we had one on 7th Street, Shona Mitchell Beauty Salon, and then right there, Anita Print Shop, also on News Boulevard. Used to be the old Hertz building, has also been removed.
Mr. Davis, could you give a little clarity on private property versus public dedicated roads?
Well, I think the issue is that the sign ordinance does not allow what they call off-premises signs. You can have a sign on your property, but there shouldn't be anyone's business sign on another location. So I'll get with staff and we'll get to the bottom of that.
Okay, is that also for rent, for sale?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Real estate signs are exempt.
Okay.
You can put a sign to sell your home.
Okay.
But you can't put a sign across town advertising a business somewhere else. A business sign needs to be on the property where the business is.
Okay, and so that is even with the permission of the owner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Evidently, businesses in New Bern don't know that, because I went back to the business owners, and they are not aware of that.
Mr.
And
Davis,
some of those signs are still in place.
Mr. Davis, if a person put her sign, signage sign on their own private property, that's still a problem because of the signed ordinance?
That's right. It has to be on the premises where the business is located.
Did you understand that, Ms. Simmons?
Yeah, I did, so that goes back to Liberty and Liberty Tax, it's not on their property. I'm using that, some of the examples of the pictures
Yeah.
that I took.
Yes, ma'am.
They are not on their property.
Do we know whether if Public Works or one of our departments removed those signs?
I don't know that
Or
their
DOT.
habits. Yeah, well, that's a good question. I know staff's habit is to pick up temporary signs in the right of way when they see them or get a complaint about them.
Maybe we should have Jeff contact her or George contact her. Or if
Work
they
with
pick
her.
your signs up, they have them, I'm sure they
Yep.
didn't throw them away. So.
That's right.
Yeah, I actually saw a city truck this morning, the Piggly Wiggly Tatum Drive. There was a truck there that was picking up 3 or 4 signs at intersections, so I'm sure we probably take those somewhere. I know during campaign season, they get taken over to Public Works if they're posted improperly, so.
George, you got any, do you know of any of those signs?
I'm not fully aware, but if we do have one, they recently picked up, certainly reserved to.
Public Works.
Yeah, somebody just work with her and help her to find the best place where you can put them and make sure they're okay.
So,
Thank you.
so would that be Jeffrey Jerry's office to let Ms. Simmons know the best place to put these signs? Would
Yes.
that be your office?
That's right, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
George will help you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Yes,
Simmons.
Thank you, son. At this time, we have a consent agenda.
Mayor, I want to make the motion because I was just amazed that all of these are in the first ward and they're all events happening and gatherings of community, and I think it's awesome. I especially want to note the J.T. Barber class of 1950 is going to be having a dedication ceremony to unveil a historical marker. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Item number 10.
Mayor, the next item is to consider a resolution approving the North Carolina Statewide Emergency Management Mutual Aid and Assistance Agreement. From time to time, the statewide mutual agreement is amended. The most recent execution was in February of 2018. This new revision, dated 2021, will update the city's designated representatives, which include the interim city manager, the fire chief, and the police chief. The agreement meets FEMA's requirements for local governments giving or receiving help in the event of a declared disaster. It's also helped speed up the process when applying for FEMA reimbursement.
Chief. You have questions? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just have Chief Gallagher and Chief Boyd, y'all both read this and in agreement with it? Thumbs up? Okay, good. Then, Mr. Mayor, if there's no questions, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving the North Carolina Statewide Emergency Management Mutual Aid and Assistance Agreement Revision 2021. And I also would like to add that this is a wonderful agreement to have in place, especially during hurricane time.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 11.
Next item is to consider a resolution approving an amendment to a letter of engagement for professional services with disaster recovery services. Following Hurricane Florence, the city entered into 2 agreements with DRS to provide professional services related to FEMA and insurance claims. On March 10th, 2020, the board approved a letter of engagement amending the scope of work for the FEMA services to include debris removal and repairs to drainage ditches and waterways. Based on that expanded scope of work, DRS estimated the updated project cost with FEMA would not exceed $1.95 million. That amount has now been exhausted and work remains to be completed. Therefore, another letter of engagement is proposed in the amount of $255,000. This will allow DRS to assist the city with beginning the closeout process on several projects, continue work on the BP station appeal, and work on additional drainage claims. Also, DRS will be able to assist our new finance staff and help them through the guidance of dealing with FEMA and reimbursements. We've also got Corey Spilding, our DRS representative. He is joining us by Zoom in case anyone has any questions.
I don't really have any questions for Corey, but I noticed this first estimate of $377,500, it included costs for the Trent Village and the City Hall and Standing Right. So what happened with that? So what's going to happen with those projects? I mean, for us?
So Stanley White is still in the process. DRS, they will assist us as needed. We're almost at the end of that process. We're currently on the back end of the environmental assessment, waiting for the public input period to expire and then for FEMA to make their determinations. The other projects, FEMA, DRS is still involved with those as well. We'd asked them when we started talking if they could sharpen their pencil a little bit more and give us a better estimate, and they did. So they've reduced some of the hours of work that they anticipate.
Okay. I just want that to, it was here in the first agreement, and then it was taken out, and I just didn't want that to be, I want to know what happened with it. So that's all joined under miscellaneous items, is that what?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're here to help us in any areas that we need help with, FEMA related.
Okay, thank you.
And also would remind the board that these services are reimbursable by FEMA. So that being said, I would
Wait, hold on a second. I forgot one other thing of Alderman Aster. So what about the aid that will be given to the finance department? Is that still included?
anything that they do that is hurricane-related management is called Cat Z, and we can apply to have their reimbursed.
Okay.
It's 5% of the overall, up to 5% of the overall amount of money that we receive from FEMA. Right now, we're looking at possibly somewhere in the neighborhood of $55 million. Is that right?
The total funding secured for Florence to date is $60.286 million.
Okay. So we can apply for up to 5% of the $60 million back for management costs.
Corey, while we have you, anything you want to update the board on or the public?
Actually, in answer, I was just going to give you a brief recap. To date, we've secured $60.286 million in funding for Florence damages. That totals $58.132 million in FEMA and state of North Carolina funding, and $2.153 million from your insurance company, and that insurance claim was paid without any deductible or portion for the city to kick in applied to the loss, which was a good benefit. We've also secured, and it's included in the total numbers, $192,000 for mitigation funding for the City Hall for two sides of the building. And in answer to your question as to why the numbers have fluctuated, initially we put together a tentative budget to try to figure out what will carry us through for the next 14 months. After meeting with Foster, some of the items that we had included in our estimate, such as the closeout work, much of that over the last 2 months, Sam has worked to transition those duties to the city. In particular, Kim Rose has been heading that up and doing a very good job at it. So we're able to reduce we believe we're able to reduce the time that we would have to allocate to that, since the city is taking over much more of those duties. And basically the outstanding items that we have left to deal with that we think that we can assist you with is the BP building appeal, which is the first appeal has already been submitted to FEMA. and that's at 1.9 million. And then you have your administrative pay issue at a little bit over 1 million, and that is pending an answer from FEMA on another project. It's a little bit complicated, but that appeal has not been submitted, but we anticipate that it will be soon. So you have two items that are outstanding that total almost $3 million in funding. So there is some work left to be done with those appeals. We're actually hoping that the first appeal will be granted by the region, being optimistic. And so the question that remains is what is left to do that we can assist the city with. We do anticipate that the Trent Village project may have some problems or some questions from FEMA that we might have to have some involvement in, but it's kind of a moving target. So we put our best thought together as to what it will take to carry us through, and that's the revised figure that we submitted to Foster this week.
This is Alderwoman Harris. I have some questions for Mr. Spalding.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Spalding, it's so nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. For a lot of people that may not know who you are, because not a lot of people follow the meetings, can you tell us how long you've been working with FEMA, your expertise?
I worked as a technical assistance contractor to FEMA for many years in different capacities. It's probably close to 25 or 30 years, some with the individual assistance program and some with the public assistance program. I wasn't anticipating the question, so it's been a long time, so if that answers your question.
I appreciate it. My other question was, and I'm not sure if you remember, but last year when we had to submit a change of scope for Stanley White, do you remember the board members asking you if we were obligated to do that? Is that still the same information that you would provide today, that we were obligated to do a change of scope for the Stanley White, for the Gaston Boulevard location, that we were obligated to tell FEMA that there was a new location?
I believe that you've characterized it correctly. I advised the board at a meeting that there was a potential feasible alternate location available, and that to comply with the laws and applicable regulations, that you should notify FEMA of that fact.
Thank you. And I want to appreciate you for all the hard work that you've done in getting this FEMA funding and working with the staff to make sure that we obtain this money. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate your time. I'm Alderwoman Harris, and I'm done speaking.
Corey, I have a question. Since you've updated on so much stuff for us, would you just kind of give the viewers and maybe some of the board members a overview of the ditch project, not the progress, because I know you're not involved in the day-to-day operations, but what did we actually get approved by FEMA and so on and so forth?
We obtained from FEMA $33 million for Category A debris removal from the ditches, and FEMA estimated that the permanent work damages, which were Cat D work, at $1.755 million, and we believe that the Cat D work is underestimated quite a bit. We didn't necessarily agree with the way that FEMA came up with their costing, and to date, through the competitive bidding process for the projects that we have put out to work to do, or through your Public Works Department, the costs have come in significantly higher than what FEMA estimated. But we are following the FEMA protocols for procurement, and there is a method to recoup the cost overruns on those. They were estimated by FEMA, and an estimate is the best guess at the time. So the Category A work has has been done in some of the basins to date. I believe that there's one or two that the work has been completed on, and the remainder is still left to do. The Trent Village project, which was a major project, which basically turned into an emergency because the berm continued to collapse and started to get to the point to endanger some of the houses there. I believe that work has been completed with the exception of maybe a few punch list items. And I defer to George for that, but that's my understanding of the status of things at this time.
Thank you, Corey.
Anybody else? Corey, could you quickly give us some information if the BP has to go to arbitration, what that process would entail?
On the BP building, we submitted what I would characterize as a very strong appeal. The position that FEMA took was one that I have never heard of FEMA taking before in the history of FEMA. They basically said that the cost of complying with their own FEMA NFIP program was unreasonable, and they weren't going to fund the requirements under their own program. To say that would be bizarre would be an understatement. So we submitted a first appeal based upon what we felt the issues were. We're hopeful the region will recognize the merits of it. If they deny it, then the second appeal options are to take it to FEMA headquarters, or the other option is to take it to a board of arbitration, which is 3 administrative law judges, and that process is relaxed. It is a courtroom setting, but it is a more relaxed atmosphere where you try to work out and hammer out the issues, and if you can't, then the judges make their determination based upon the applicable law and facts.
Well, the only reason I ask, if we took that avenue, I feel like FEMA has been pretty reasonable in compensation, and I certainly would not want to burn a bridge with future empirical data, past empirical data as to where the city might be going with future events. So I guess that probably wouldn't in any way create any animus or hard feelings, but again, anytime you go to arbitration, it's a bit of a usurp of the powers to be in FEMA, and I don't know. We would tell you if we wanted to do that. Is that correct?
After the first appeal is determined by the region, we will discuss it with the city, and the city will make the ultimate determination as to what they wish to do for a second appeal, or drop the matter if that's what you would like to do.
Well, okay. Bob,
Yeah, well, I'm telling you,
we're not a lot more than I ever thought about.
We're not asking for anything that's above and beyond the rules of FEMA themselves. So the only thing we're doing is we're asking for them to be fair with us on the building. We're following their guidelines, and you can count on this going to arbitration. I can almost, in fact, I've got a standing bet with Corey of Pensacola that they won't even reply to. I just don't think they're going to even reply to our appeal. And after the end of 90 days, if they don't reply, then it automatically goes to arbitration. And I feel that that's what they're going to do. They've got this project worksheet so messed up, they don't really know how to answer our questions now. So the appeal is a great appeal. If anybody reads it, we'll win the appeal. If they don't read it and the 90 days expires, I think we should go right straight to arbitration.
Do you want to give staff and our consultant a direction on part of the board now, or do you want to wait?
Well, no, I think we should wait and see by some chance if they rule in our favor on it. I mean, I'm doubting it, but I think we should certainly wait. But I'm also going to be the first one to recommend that we go to arbitration if they don't rule in our favor.
Okay. However you want to handle it, because you, as fire chief, I believe on several hurricanes, you were our FEMA consultant of sorts.
Well,
So I'll follow
there's
your
so
lead
much
on
of it,
that.
so much of it has changed now. So this new delivery package, it's just so different. And we're not the only cities having problems with this new delivery package. There's been some conversations with the state about the problems, and I think the League of Municipalities is involved in the delivery package now. So it's changed so much, and I just praise the Lord that we were able to get someone on like Corey and DRS to be able to guide us through all this stuff.
Okay.
Has a motion been made?
No. Wait on me.
No.
Okay. Mayor and board members, if there's no other conversations, I would like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving an amendment to a letter of engagement for professional services, FEMA with Disaster Recovery Services, LLC.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 12.
Next item, Mayor, is to consider a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute contract documents for the Hurricane Florence Category A drainage ditch project in the Quarry 2 drainage basin. Over the past with FEMA on a project to remove sediment and debris from drainage ditches throughout the city. The work to address the Quarry 2 drainage basin Cat A project was put out to bid, and Trader Construction Company submitted the lowest bid at $374,800. It's requested that the interim manager be authorized to execute a contract with Trader Construction for this portion of the project, along with any change orders within the budgeted amount. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute contract documents for Hurricane Florence Cat A drainage ditch project in the Quarry 2 drainage basin.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Okay,
May I say one more thing on that? Do you know where the Quarry 2 drainage basin, about where it is in town, or should we get George up here to kind of give us an idea?
Let's get George up.
Yeah, George, if you don't mind, so people will know when they start seeing people in their backyards digging in ditches or in the side streets or whatever, about what neighborhoods does that?
The Quarry 2 basin is generally made up of the Derby Park area and the drainage outfall that is between there and Bosch. So between BSH, there's a big outfall ditch. So the water going that way, and it goes to the train tracks, which then it attaches to Derby Park. So it'll be that area that this work will be starting in. And I would estimate, once we get the contract documents through signatures and have them back with the bonding, probably in the next 3 weeks, we should be able to let Trader have a notice to proceed, go ahead and start.
Okay, thank you, George.
George, while you're up there, and I'm not going to I just was going to ask you this in generalities. You know, we had talked a little bit about some of these communities that are doing these emergency kind of calming of drainage reservoirs, and notably in Alderman Kinsey's ward and Alderman Best's ward. If you could just make a couple comments, kind of give the board some not direction, but some ideas of some things the city might in the future look that other cities are implementing with particularly land that's kind of does not serve utility at the time that it could do that.
from our discussion last week, and this is, we see this in a lot of parts of the city that were developed prior to any stormwater rules. So there is no stormwater retention or detention in those areas. And so what happens is you've got 80-90% impervious surface. So when we have a heavy rain, all of that water is running off the site downhill. And what I've seen in other communities, and I think it's advantageous for us to look at, is to look at new ways of retention before we get it to the outfall. That way, the communities or the neighborhoods on the downhill end of that drainage basin aren't getting this huge influx of water. You don't see it in the new developments as much because they have state permits and city permits and they're required to deal with this. But a lot of our community was developed prior to any of these rules, and so we're going to have to go back in and retrofit. We've kind of, within our department, identified some less desirable non-buildable properties that may be useful to do this on, and I think that's going to be our future, to deal with some of these areas that receive high-intensity rains that do flood the neighborhoods. If we could capture some of that rainfall uphill, I think it'd be a huge advantage for our town.
Yes, sir.
George, I don't want to create a lot of extra work for anybody, but is there any way that staff could maybe look at a citywide map that shows all of our drainage ditches, which I think we have already?
Yes, we do.
And somehow color code that so we will know maybe green would be what's already been completed by FEMA. Maybe yellow is what's going to be completed. I'm just throwing some ideas out there. That way we'll know, because we get, or at least I get calls all the time from people, hey, when are you coming to do my neighborhood? And I know we probably have all that information, but we've brought this up numerous times. It's piecemeal based off the process. And for us to have to go back and pull all that up, it would be really helpful if we had a map. That way we could actually share it. Colleen could share it so people would know what's going on.
Yes, we can certainly do that. We can do it by basin, where we've completed the work and where we're working.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And George, one reason I kind of mentioned that right now, during this period of time where we're getting a lot of FEMA help from the federal government, it kind of gives us an opportunity as a city to catch our breath that, fortunately for us, some of the things that might be some normal maintenance with the city, if we have not been lucky to receive these fundings, that possibly we can look at some capital expenditures to acquire certain properties that could be converted to primary and secondary retention areas to, again, kind of like in Johnny Ray's case, he has a tremendous culvert problem on Loose Boulevard. And, when you see a vortex of water just certainly can't go anywhere, if we had that reservoir of sorts, it maybe could help some. Certainly not in a hurricane or something, but some of these other higher rain events we're having.
Right, and some of these things we're currently working through the resiliency and recovery plan with Moffitt Nichols. And they are formulating these general ideas into plan and identifying places that this would be a positive improvement for the city. And I think what that plan is going to then allow us to do is go after additional grant funding to possibly acquire these areas or even construct them. So I think long term we're headed that direction. I think that would be of a huge benefit during heavy rain events and possibly to shape some of the heavy rain off of a hurricane if it's a short duration.
Well, when you're not doing anything else and you're looking at GIS, if you maybe look at tax values, not that that's value itself, and potential cost of construction and the benefits of soil that could be useful in other areas of the city for remediation, wherever, if you could maybe just run some numbers. I think, a couple of geographic areas we mentioned. Would the board want to see that? Not that we're spending any money.
Sure. I have a question for you. Where is it that you're talking about the water is not moving and whirlpooling?
Right in Colony Drive.
Is it stopped at a culvert?
That's where the dumpster came into the pond, came into the drain there.
But it's still doing it?
Pretty much so, because what happens at the railroad tracks, the pipe is this high.
Yeah.
So the water has to really come up to go through the pipe. and that's been a big issue for quite some time.
Is that ditch on the part of the quarry project or something that's going to have some Cat A work done?
Upstream of that culvert, the work has been completed. The culvert actually is in News Boulevard, which is the NCDOT structure.
I was going to ask if it could be something we could mitigate through FEMA. But if it's
Future plan, it would be great.
if it's deep, Corey, can you hear me?
I heard you, Bobby, and the Category A ditch removal is classified as emergency work, and it's not eligible for mitigation.
Is it any way that we could take a look at that to see what it really is? Because basically you're listening to what we're giving, and that's something that has been a problem for a long period of time.
I guess what I'll ask is George, do you know if that is associated with any of the Cat D inspections that Draper did for permanent work as well?
The culvert was actually inspected, but it was not included with our Cat D as it is not one of our structures. It's not a city maintained structure.
So that's a state maintained.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, so I think that answers my question. I mean, if it's owned by the state, we certainly can't do anything with it with FEMA. However, if it's an issue, and George, if the pipe is an issue going under, I'm all in favor of this sending a resolution to the DOT about doing some work there to improve it, to keep it from backing up. If it's the pipe, if the pipe's the issue, the size of the pipe is the issue.
There's several issues with that culvert system going under at Colony Drive.
Well, then I reckon the best thing to do is if you think that a resolution to the state bank to increase their pipe size or something like that would help, just let us know, okay? And we'll work on that part of it because we need to.
Well, we need to go ahead and do that now. I mean, it is the problem.
Well, we don't know if the pipe size is the problem. I reckon
The pipe size is the problem. You know, the mayor and I have been looking at this situation for over 8 years.
Okay. Well, we probably need to get an engineer to determine whether or not if that would help.
Okay.
I'd like to have been with him when he laid that pipe about a foot too high.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna do a resolution to the state, then we need to include some other areas as well that state maintained, like on Simmons Street and other areas. So I think all of that should be put within that package deal to the state.
Well, and my idea, George, like we were talking, and Danny met us back in the back room, Clean Water Trust Fund helped a lot with Simmons, with the court, with Mark Marietta, and so I was thinking, there might be funding available that, Barber, as you were speaking, one thing George was looking into is the possibility of when the canal is a little bit, we get saturated like we did last week, and the capillary of water getting into the ground is not there, that this reservoir, if you had a sudden surge in water, this thing would kind of stockpile. I mean,
Yeah, we
give her a little dynamics
We can hold the water
there.
uphill and it's not coming down into the lower neighborhoods so fast, just like a modern design stormwater pond does in big communities.
But we're going to do some Cat A work on the other side of it, correct?
Yes.
Is that, so that could possibly, when we clean the ditches on the other side of it, that could possibly help it.
And one other thing, I know Alderman Best was, we looked at, and Alderwoman Harris, the whole railroad right of way and that situation from the pump station down to the Simmons Street, where are we on getting all that canal cleaned out? Barbie, you remember when we were looking at that?
Yes.
We've actually got some additional A work that we're having Draper Aiden and the contractor look at in there along the railroad tracks we've identified some additional areas that weren't in the contract plans that we wanted to see if we could include along that area from North Hills to the pumps.
Okay. Does any board have any other questions?
I'd like to give you a compliment here. I've seen the pumps running during all the rain we had last week. I went out there just on my own, just to check it out, to see what was going on, because the ditches were really full, especially in the Duffield area, along on Simmons Street there, and the water is really coming. And tell me again, how many gallons come through there per minute?
We can, on the hydraulic pumps, we can do approximately 21,000 gallons a minute per
Okay.
pump, and we have 2 pumps.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, thank you for your information.
Thanks, George.
We're going to go to appointments. If I miss anything,
No, no,
13, we're going to,
Did we ever vote on
We're gonna-
12? Did we vote
we're gonna
on
table
12? We did.
13.
Okay, so now we're on 13. Okay. I just got lost.
so, I'm going to go to appointments. You have any appointments?
No, we didn't do 13.
We're going to table it.
Oh,
Yeah, we're asking to table that to
I'm
another
sorry.
meeting.
No, I really missed it. No, sir, I have no appointments this
Okay.
evening.
Alderwoman Harris.
No,
Appointment.
Mayor.
Alderman Astor.
No, sir.
Alderman Kent.
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to find it here. Okay. Mr. James Woods, which we all know, our very own, contacted me and has a desire to serve, want to serve on the Community Development Advisory Committee. So I think it would be an honor to have Mr. Woods on that committee.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now, would the board want to make a motion on this appointments to the Dangerous Dog Board? Madam Clerk, was there one position that was not, 2 of the vets said they would update us on that?
The 2 current appointees, Dr. Steve Stelma and Donna Baker, their terms have expired, but they're willing to be reappointed. And then there's a new interest in the 3rd seat by Dr. Bobby Katraba. So all 3 of those, 2 would be reappointments, 1 would be a new appointment.
Okay, and he would like to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
They all would.
I'll make that motion. I make the motion that we reappoint Dr. Steve Stelma and Donna Baker to the Dangerous Dog Board, and we appoint Dr. Bobby Katorba.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle,
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, attorney's report,
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
city manager's report.
Just a reminder that National Night Out has been rescheduled for this Wednesday and Thursday, and you were sent the updated schedule earlier today by email. That's all.
Okay, let's do new business, starting with Alderman Odom.
None tonight, sir.
Alderman Best.
Yes, I do, Mayor. I attended the FEMA environmental assessment meeting at the Omega Center on July 29th, and I was a little upset because there was a lot of citizens there that was under the assumption that we as a board have already voted and approved that we were going to build the Standing White Rec Center on 3rd Avenue. And I just think that we, Mr. Hughes, if you would please give our citizens a brief update on where we stand at this point with the Standing White Rec Center, whereas what we have done, why we did what selected the process of an alternate site, so our citizens will have a clear understanding, because it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was total chaos. And I just didn't like the way that the meeting turned out, and I think we owe it to our citizens. I know I do, to be transparent, and I think that we as a board have been transparent, but apparently there are some people that, in our citizens, some that think that we have not been. And I just don't feel that at this point in time that I am going to continue to even discuss the Standing White Rec Center, because if I have citizens that feel that I have misled them, or if I have lied to them, whatever the circumstances may be, I just don't have the time, the energy to really listen to a lot of this propaganda. And it's beginning to be, it's really beginning to be a problem, because it affects a lot of people's lives, and it has thrown stones at a lot of people. A lot of, I'm not going to say call somebody a liar, a lot of untruth was told. And I just think at this point, Mr. Hughes, if you could give a brief overview of where we're at right now with rebuilding Standing White Rec Center at location-wise or whatever.
Yes, ma'am. So as everyone will remember, back in the spring of 2020, I believe it was May, the Board of Aldermen voted to change the scope of work on this the Stanley White Recreation Center project to move it to the 3rd Avenue location. That triggered an environmental assessment with FEMA. That process started in late August of 2020, and it is still going on right now. We are in one of the final phases of that environmental assessment, which is the public input. I believe that public input period should end on August 16th, which is in a week, about a week from now. Once the public input period closes, FEMA will review any public input that they have received, and so if anyone went to that meeting, they had an opportunity to put their information down on cards. They also had an opportunity to mail information to FEMA or email information to FEMA on how they felt about the Stanley White Recreation Center project. So once we receive a determination from FEMA, which we hope will be with anywhere from a week after the public input period to 6 weeks, we just don't know what their time period will be, then we will know where things stand. Once we hear from them, it's up to the board on how you want to proceed. But on staff side, once we do hear that determination and you tell us what direction you'd like us to take, we're ready to put out an RFP to go ahead and start building the Stanley White Recreation Center back.
Okay. You did not include at this point if we have all as a board voted on rebuilding Standing White back on 3rd Avenue or Gaston Boulevard. That was part of my statement.
No decision has currently been made on that decision.
All right, thank you,
Well,
sir.
let me add this. Once this board approved the change of scope of work, and once FEMA now that FEMA has agreed, and that question was asked at the Omega Center, that in accordance to Executive Order 11988, FEMA cannot and will not fund us to build that center back in the floodplain. That's a given. And if you want to ask Corey his opinion on it, you're more than welcome to ask Corey his opinion on it. But once this board voted, and all of us voted to do it, to change the scope of work, under the law, they can, and if the alternate site is approved, there's no building in the floodplain. It has to be moved to the alternate site.
This is Alderwoman Harris. I have something to say on that too. If you go back to that meeting on June 15th, 2020, it was not a resolution. It was giving the city manager direction. And you can go back and see that all of us did not necessarily agree, but the FEMA expert, who happens to be on the call tonight, stated when you and Odom asked if we were obligated to tell them about this property. Now let's go back to March, when I was in DC at a closed session, when we discussed this property, and you guys talked to us as if it was going to be a backup plan. What happened? We all voted on October 8th that we would build Stanley White back in that same location when it was approved. Once y'all found out it was approved, that's when you started doing this stuff.
When what was
And
approved?
the deceit and the lack of transparency that we're speaking of. You guys try to portray it a certain way, but You knew all along you never wanted to spend that money in that community, and I've said that from day one.
All right, can I say something?
So hold on, I'm not done. But it is true that we can also ask for a change of scope back to the original location, and we can also ask for a change of scope in regards to the size, because that was stated in one of the meetings and answered in the questions that was garnered and gathered from the Stanley White Rec Committee. So let's not make it seem like this is a done deal, because it can be changed.
Hey, Corey, can you answer that question? I mean, is it law that once an alternate site has been determined and approved, that it has to go to that alternate site and it can no longer be built back in a floodplain? Is that not true?
That is correct. If I can recap the history of this a little bit. Okay, when we started going through with FEMA and the Stanley White Center and the costing and so on, and putting the project together, there was no alternate site that was feasible, that was available to relocate the Stanley White Center. And the city advised, under Executive Order 11988, FEMA and the city are required, especially more FEMA than the city, although it does apply to the city as well, is required to relocate out of the floodplain when using federal funds if a feasible or acceptable location is available. So when we
Or real quick, can you go step by step so people can have an understanding?
Okay. So in the very beginning, there was no alternate location. And we advised FEMA to that. They did the review, and they approved the project to go back at the original location, as that there was no acceptable alternative location outside of the floodplain. The project went through the FEMA review and approval process, which took a considerable period of time. Considering that it was $8 million, it has to go through Office of Legislative Affairs review and other reviews. At a point in time, the city became aware that an alternate location, the Gaston property, was available, and that it is possible that could be an acceptable alternative location. The city asked if we were required to notify FEMA of a potential alternate location. And my answer to you was yes. If you do not, and you rebuild back at the existing location, there is the potential that FEMA could come back to you and say that you violated Executive Order 11988, that there was a feasible alternative location, and could deny all of your funding. So the decision was made to notify FEMA of the alternate location. We notified them of that. Then that instituted a process of the environmental assessment, and the environmental assessment was to determine whether the alternate location was in fact a suitable location for the Stanley White Center. That process has been ongoing for almost a year now. There's been numerous public input meetings, and the environmental justice end of it and the environmental end of the property has been extensively explored by FEMA and in the city in all of the meetings. There's been bore samplings done of the property to make sure that there's no contaminants there. The whole 9 yards has been done. Most recently, FEMA held a public conference with the city, and although I wasn't in attendance at the meeting and I haven't seen it, I have been told that FEMA advised you exactly what I advised the Board of Aldermen a year earlier, that said that if there is a feasible location outside of the floodplain, that you are required to relocate it outside of the floodplain. The environmental assessment has not been completed yet. However, the indications are that the alternate location is considered to be a feasible location. If that is the case, then you cannot build it back in the floodplain.
Corey, thank you for that information. So since you're the one that, the FEMA consultant, the expert that was working on it, March 10th, in that closed session, they knew about an alternate location. FEMA accepted the application on March 14th. So why did we wait so long to inform them of an alternate location? Why did we ask for a change in scope after FEMA had already approved the funding for that same location? So help the people understand, or help me understand, how can FEMA once say yes to that location and then say no to the location? Or the timing, like why did we wait and not alert them when we knew on the 10th of another location, of a possible location?
Are you talking about the 4-day difference between the dates?
That it was, yes, that we knew about an alternate location, and when the application was accepted by FEMA, aren't you obligated from the date it's accepted to update them back then? Why did we wait so long to update FEMA on the alternate location?
The alternate location became known to the city, and I don't have the exact dates in front of me. You have iterated that the Board of Aldermen met on the 10th. I have no reason to dispute that. The reason I was asked if we should notify FEMA immediately of a potential alternate location, and my answer to that question was, this project has been under review by FEMA for months now. It has taken years to get this project to this point. It is in Office of Legislative Affairs review, which is the final step to obligation. If you notify FEMA today that there is a potential alternate location and you pull that project back from being obligated, it might take years for FEMA to obligate that project. So the decision was made, since it was in the final days of obligation, to wait for the project to be obligated and then perform your duties under the law to notify them that there is a potential alternate location. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you had notified FEMA prior to the obligation, and they had pulled the project back. And let's say that the Gaston Street property turned out not to be a feasible location. Let's say that they found toxic chemicals in the ground, and FEMA said that it is not an acceptable location. You would be at this point in time, okay, with a unobligated project, and by the time the EA was done, which would be the same point in time that we are now, okay, you would still have an unobligated project, and it would take months, if not a year, to push that project through to get it to obligation. So that is the reason that there was a slight delay in notifying FEMA of the potential alternate location. The other issue that is here is that I had requested that more time to research into this section of the law, which is a very difficult one. It involves environmental regulations, to determine what the city's exact obligation was to notify FEMA. We know that you're required to notify them prior to while the project is being formulated, if there is a potential alternate location, at which time there wasn't. And after final research, I came to the conclusion that even after obligation, you were required to notify FEMA and explore the potential alternative. And I hope that this answers your question.
Yes, thank you for that information. And so basically what you were saying is we decided not to say anything, and what was the reason why this update couldn't have been brought to the public, that was what we were going to do, is not tell FEMA until it was approved the other location and do a change of scope? Why were we not transparent about that part? Is it something, because I've heard in many of these meetings how we don't want to tell or say or do that with FEMA because FEMA will get upset. So why did we not tell the public that we were going to do this? And this may not necessarily be a question for you, Corey, but as the expert, I'm wondering, did you advise the board not to say anything to the public in regards to the next steps? Because we thoroughly have asked numerous meetings for updates, and this is a very important update because at that point, citizens would have known that Stanley White could no longer be built in that same location instead of dragging it out the way that it was. That's
in answer to your question, I did not advise the board or anyone not to make any public comments about this. This was a matter of, as you have pointed out, okay, 4 days as to whether we notified FEMA or not. I don't want to give the illusion or the idea that we deliberately held something up for a long period of time and didn't tell FEMA. That was not the case. The project was in its final stages of obligation, and the judgment call was made to just let it go through at this point in time and deal with the alternate location after the project was obligated. And I stand by that decision, and I believe it was a very wise decision for the city to make.
And could there have been any negative on the application if we did inform the citizens of what you stated in regards to the change of scope? If FEMA got wind of it, could it have hurt or harmed the process that we were in?
I don't know how to answer
That's
that.
what triggered the EA. The change of scope of work is what triggered the EA.
Well, the other point here is that at this point in time that we're talking about, this was a potential alternate location. It is not until the EA is completed that a final determination will be made as to whether this is an acceptable location or not. So we've gone through a year-long process to determine as to whether this is an acceptable location. I'd like to point out that the knowledge of the Gaston State property was a potential alternate location.
Corey, I love that you keep saying that it was a potential, but that's not true, and that has nothing to do with you, because some of the owners have come out and said that they were approached by the city attorney that if they did not sell this property, the city was going to condemn it. Now, we know it's politics, probably ain't going to tell the truth, but this alternative location has been a setup from the beginning on March 10th. And so we need to make that clear, because when I was in the hospital and y'all had this meeting at Stanley White, you had these individuals jump up here and try to dog me and Barber Best about what's going on. And that's terrible that y'all do that y'all sit up here and you try to sow deceit in this community as the leadership is not doing what they're supposed to when you try to hoodwink us. You come into these meetings to sabotage opportunities for the black and brown community. And it's terrible that you do that, because the majority of the community cried out to us, invited us into their churches and their homes, and we voted to build it back there, and FEMA agreed to it. Because you did not want to spend $8 million or more in the community, you chose not to. That's a smack in the face, because you don't just represent your ward, you represent the entire city. And I'm frustrated that y'all continue to sow deceit into these communities like that. It's not right. It's not right. So it doesn't even matter what FEMA has to say. It can't go back in that location, and you did that on purpose. I'm done.
Well, I need to respond. Number one, I don't see how you can say that this wasn't transparent when we all voted on the change, or gave direction on the change. I changed it, okay? We gave direction to the city manager and to our consultant to change the scope of work, and it was voted on in this room by everybody, including you.
He said we had
You know what? Now, let me get through talking. You asked me to stay until you got through, so let me get through. The second thing is, you keep talking about in that community. You know, is Third Avenue not part of the community? I mean, it's part of the community as well. Did you read the email that you received today from one of your constituents? I'm assuming it was a constituent that told you to quit messing around with this thing and let's build a recreation center back. We've been playing around with this thing for a long time now. It's time to put a center back, and let's make the center bigger and better and drier, and let's get this thing going. I'm going to tell you, thank you. This has gone on long enough. I'm tired of people making motions or voting to buy the property and then saying, well, we didn't make a recommendation to buy the property. It was an alternate site. Well, yeah, you're right. It was an alternate site until the scope of work was changed. Then it becomes the primary site. You voted for it. You made the motion to vote to buy the property, and now you're trying to wiggle your way out of it, and it's as clear as day that that's what's going on. And I'm tired of it. Listen, you got to understand, this is a 428 grant. Do you know under a 428 grant that we can apply to take this entire amount of money and use it somewhere else? I mean, we can use it somewhere else. We can go out and build a center in Martin Marietta Park. There's not a single board member that wants to do that. We all want this center to start construction tomorrow on the alternate site. And let's quit messing around about building a building in a floodplain that in the next hurricane that comes through here, we've got to worry about it again. Let's build a building in a building that won't flood, that we can use for a Red Cross shelter for the community with a generator instead of being stuck in some hot school with no electricity, no food, nothing but hot water. You know, let's start building. If I would have been in your shoes, I would have gone to the community and said, this is the best thing that can happen to this community. This is going to be a nice building. It's going to be out of the floodplain. It's not going to cost the city $50,000 or $60,000 a year in flood insurance. It can be utilized as a community center for the community over there. It can be utilized as a Red Cross shelter. We can build it back bigger because we don't have to pay all this money to raise the building up. The roads around the building, we won't be able to use it during a hurricane because all the roads around the building floods. And I take offense to some of these comments that have been made about backroom deals. So as a result of that, Jamie, I've asked the city manager today to put you on the FEMA team, and you're going to be getting an invite to on Thursdays to attend a 2-hour FEMA meeting to discuss all these outstanding projects. So be prepared to get that invite and sit in this Zoom meeting Thursday at 10 o'clock for 2 hours. And that way you can make it whatever discussion you want to about backroom. No backroom stuff has been done here. You were advised of everything that was being done here. You knew about it. You made the motion. And now you've got 15 people that are upset with you about it. But you should hear the comments that I received from the people at the Omega Center when I was over there the other day. One of them was a person that said, I went over there to that Stanley White Center the other day after the rainstorm, and the whole field was underwater. We need to move it. We need to move it. That was what was said to me. And so I'm tired of it. I think we need to move forward with it. We need to quit worrying about it. You should have taken the opportunity to tell the people in your neighborhood over there what a good thing this would have been and what a good thing it can be. And that evidently didn't take place. Instead, you followed the lead of a few people and you are fighting it tooth and nail. And That's all I got to say about
I'm
that.
not fighting anything tooth and nail, Bobby. I've said from the beginning that purchasing the property is a great idea as a plan B. How many FEMA meetings have I been invited to when the congressman and you and the mayor and Odom would come down there and talk to them? I told you that at the meeting on June 9th of that year. You did not invite me to these meetings. All of a sudden, because I call you out on this stuff, now I'm going to get an invite. I'll be glad to be in them FEMA meetings because you know you have had meetings without me because I called you on it. And I speak for the majority of the community that did come to me. So unless that has changed, which in my eyes it hasn't, they wanted to be built back in that same location. That's what it was. Don't tell me I didn't go into the community and tell them what was good and what wasn't. Because I have said that. You saw the video. You complained about the video that I made. But what I do stand on is that I'm voted by the people. And so if the majority of the people asked and wanted it to be built back in that same location, I am obligated as a mouthpiece for that board, for the majority that did speak, to try and advocate it to be back in that location. So please, don't ever come up on me when it comes to what I do in my community, because I do a lot. And I'm tired too. Because when we first heard about Stanley White, we were told years. But we brokered a deal with the Omega Center for $75,000. What's going on? How come it's not open for basketball? What are we doing as a city to engage these children and these youth while we're trying to figure out what's going on with Stanley White?
Did you know that I was having meetings with the FEMA, and I was on the FEMA team, and we were also having meetings with some congressmen and senators? Did you know that?
After the fact, when we got the update at the meeting.
So did you know, because I kind of gave a report almost at every one of these meetings. Did you know that I was having this FEMA meetings weekly, sometimes 2 or 3 days a week? Did you know that?
Yes.
So why didn't you ask to be a part of them?
3 a quorum, 4 a quorum. I don't know how many people were going to that meeting. And I was specifically concerned about everything that dealt with Stanley White because I'm the ward representation in that. And I've stated that. So you can sit up here and depict this all you want. I know what the facts are. You guys never wanted to build it back there, and you swindled the people, and you try to sow deceit into the community and make it like leadership didn't do what they were supposed to. I will never take back that I made the motion because it was a smart decision, because I'm not a FEMA consultant. I don't know if they're going to obligate the project, so I had to err on side of caution that just in case. My mother raised me to think about just in case, and that's what I did. That doesn't mean I went behind the community and didn't support it. And you keep using the word motion. We gave direction. And in that meeting, I said the only reason why I'm voting yes is because we are obligated to do so. And I'm not going to sit here and lie.
I'm going to ask you this question one more time. There was numerous times that I gave a report up here talking about the meetings that I attended with FEMA and with the congressman and with the senator. There was numerous times that I gave that report. If you were so interested, why didn't you ask to be a part of these meetings? I'm the only alderman that was on those meetings. I'm the only alderman that was on those meetings.
I asked Mark. I did ask to be CC'd on the meetings, and I never was. And it's documented in one of the meetings, and someone can do the research.
Well, you'll be on them now.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. We're still under new business with Alderman Best. And Alderman Best, you kind of have the floor here because it is your new business. Would you yield to Alderman Odom having a comment at this time?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a question for, I guess, Foster or the clerk. I agree with what Alderwoman said about the change in scope. It was a decision or direction I think the board gave. But when the FEMA consultants came and presented this alternative plan with the 2 gymnasia or the 2 basketball courts with the walking track across the top, I believe we took a vote that night. Am I correct?
I don't recall.
I don't recall that either.
Alderman Odom, to answer your question, some of us on the board were probably so exhausted from trying to kill a deal that the FEMA wanted to put a seawall around the Stanley White Center. We were so exhausted from trying to talk FEMA out of making us put a seawall around Stanley White. Do you remember that?
I do remember.
Along with other such things that, some of us a little blur if we don't have it all written down, what all we did to try for the best we could to remediate this situation. But go ahead, Alderman Odom.
I'm pretty sure we took a vote that night because I think there was some folks that were upset that said it was unnecessary us taking the vote that night. Some people on the board didn't appreciate that the vote was taken. But procedurally, it was a legal vote, if I remember correctly, and the board did take a vote. And I think, Alderwoman Harris, if you remember, I think you voted against it. Is that correct?
I have no idea what meeting you're talking about and what you're talking about.
It was the meeting where the gentleman, I guess he's an architect, that's doing the Stanley White design, came and presented it.
I believe it was in February of 2020.
When they did the presentation?
Yes, they gave us a presentation and a
Right,
schematic of what the building looked like.
We voted on all of that based on the fact that there was two options still available, which was Old Stanley White and Gaston Boulevard. When they did the full presentation, I voted no against the presentation because I didn't agree with it.
Right. That's right, but I believe it was either 6-1 or 5-2 on that vote, and that actually was a vote that was taken about that concept plan. So I'm just, my piece is I'm ready to vote on it. I don't know when we can. As soon as we can, let's vote on it. I've heard from enough people within the community that are in favor of moving the site, and I'm looking forward to the ribbon cutting when we're playing basketball on the gym court. So that's all I have to say.
Alderman Best, it is your new business, so you go right ahead.
At that March 2020 meeting, when it was brought to our attention about an alternate site, I can say right here now, I totally misunderstood that whole process. And I wish that process had been discussed with us more in depth of how FEMA was going to handle that alternate site. And that was not discussed. So I can honestly say, I did not understand the process because it should have been disclosed to us so that we can understand. Because Alderman Harris, of course, she misunderstood the process, and so did I. Because if at that point in time, I would not have voted for it. But it was not disclosed to us. And for as the Gaston Boulevard project, I think it's a great location to put the center. But by me not understanding that process and what I'm hearing here tonight, it was that once it was presented to us at that March 2020 meeting that we all voted on it, then it was a done deal by me not understanding the process. So, Alderman Aster, I wish that you would have explained that process to me and Alderman Harris a little more in detail. Because I really did not, and I'm not sitting here blaming you for it now, but I wish it had been discussed a little bit more in depth.
I'm not sure how much it was discussed, how much it wasn't. My memory's not that great. But I know that it wasn't, I think it was during that same meeting you thanked Alderman Odom and the mayor.
That was April 28th meeting I thanked the Alderman and the mayor, because I'm still under the assumption that it was an alternate site, not knowing the process, or if FEMA approved it, that's where it was going to go.
It was an alternate site until FEMA approved it.
Exactly. And see, I did not.
Okay.
That was my mistake for misunderstanding, and I feel your mistake for not really, since you got you had all the advice,
I
to
can tell you
explain
if
it.
it's mine or not, because I need to go back and review the meeting and see how it was explained. I don't really know. I can't hardly remember what happened yesterday sometimes.
Nor can I at some points. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Alderman Kinsey.
I don't have anything, sir.
Alderman Aster.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty clear on this, same as Jeff. I think it just makes good business sense to move the center out of the floodplain. We're talking a football field away with some nice trails connecting that to Henderson Park, with some absolutely wonderful amenities in Henderson Park as well that have been discussed. And because FEMA is going to require us, I'll be the first one to make the motion, and can't wait to make the motion to relocate it, because it makes good business sense to locate it out of the floodplain. And And that's all I have.
Okay. Alderwoman Harris.
Yes, I'd like to take a moment of silence for Mr. Van Cupperson that passed away. He worked for the city for many years and then left for bigger and better opportunities out in California. He was a good man. He did a lot with Duck Fest, and we lost a good person.
Who is that?
Oh, my God.
Dan Cupperson.
Jamie, when did this happen? I'm stunned. August 5th? I am so stunned.
I don't know about it.
You worked with Mike Avery's team during the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Alderwoman Harris, is there anything else?
No, that's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Bingle.
I have nothing tonight, sir.
Okay, my only thoughts on new business, I would like to say that this is going into our fourth year, and I certainly will continue to do my part to try to be the mayor of this city and to facilitate better communication. For any shortcomings as far as any misunderstandings, I want to take full responsibility as far as acknowledging. I'll try to do a better job as mayor, and I really do appreciate working with all 6 elected aldermen for this ward. I like it when we can physically go out and look at things, and I like it when we can have healthy discussion and that leads for ultimately the best decisions on the part of our citizenry. Having said all that, I also do want to reiterate, which I've publicly said many times, that along with other aldermen, and in all due respect to all the elected officials, that I have for some time now thought that in the best interest of the future of our youth and our seniors and the quality of life for all and the betterment of our city, I have for many months thought and expressed that I think the relocation to Stanley White to the elevation of about 14 feet best serves our citizenry. So at this time, under any other new business at this time, I would like to, Mr. Davis, do we need a closed session tonight? Board members, do we need a closed session for anything? Is there anything further to come before the New Bern Board of Aldermen at this time?
No, sir. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. Let's have a roll call on that. Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes?
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Beagle.
Yes.
Motion is carried, and we are adjourned.
Hey, Corey.